What do you think is going to be the next step after the US has now gone in after Iran's nuclear capabilities? Check out this clip over here with Chris Cuomo talking on the news with various guests about what is going on, what he projects is going to be the future. And we'll watch this clip together and then talk about it. But first, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Check this out.
Whether or not it was deception to give the B-2s full surprise over Iran. And I think the president was pretty clear, Chris, over the past couple of days, within 2 weeks. And he kept saying maybe sooner. If we just sort of start at the very closest point to what just happened, the East Room, as the president walked out, not an Oval Office address. And you think about the last time I remember a president speaking at this time of the evening on a weekend, it was Barack Obama talking about the killing of Osama bin Laden. That was on a Sunday night from the East Room, an address to the nation. This one was much shorter. The fact that he went through all of the bad acts by Iran, talking about them as the bully of the Middle East for the past 40 years. We haven't heard a president speak like that. This, I think you saw a level of emotion from President Trump conveying to the American people that he was angry. Angry at what Iran had done in the past. And you think about just in the past hour or so, the Iranians themselves said, you started this, Mr. Trump. We will end it, with a map of where U.S. bases are in the Middle East. And you and I have talked about that same map a number of times, Chris, and said that people should pray for the troops. That was the Iranians speaking. So I think that the message that the president was given tonight was not so much for the American people. This wasn't hand-holding, I am the commander-in-chief, rally around the flag kind of speech. This was a speech directed at the Iranian regime. He said they will make peace or there will be future attacks which are far easier. And many targets are left. So I think you think about the amount of U.S. military assets that have been moved into the Middle East over the past week that you and I have talked about a lot. The Pentagon is ready to launch a sustained bombing campaign, and then also ready to deal with the Iranian response, whether it be closing the Strait of Hormuz, that would send oil prices into the hundreds of dollars a barrel, send gas prices up at least $1 here in the United States, or whether it's attacks against U.S. bases overseas.
Leland, let me ask you something. There is an assumption here that the regime knows better than to retaliate. Help us understand, from your time reporting in the region and the research and reporting you've done, how much sense that makes to believe that this regime could have something like this happen and come to the table instead of come back?
It's a great question. And I would just look back at history. You think about Benjamin Netanyahu over the past 18 months has escalated against the Iranians, against the advice, and you could call it the blob in Washington, right? All the people who say you can't escalate against the Iranians, it's going to be World War III, it's going to be all-out war in the Middle East. You think about who the Israelis have killed. They killed the head of Hezbollah. They took out all of Hezbollah that had 100,000 missiles pointed at Israel. That was the Iranians' insurance policy. Then over 2 strikes the past year, last year, the Israelis took out the Iranians' air defenses. And the Iranians responded as best they could. Remember, there was those 2 big missile barrages and drone attacks, all of which were shot down. And I think the question for the Iranian regime, and this is probably what is being put to them in the back channel, is pretty simple. If you want to stay alive, this ends. And if you'd like us to end the regime, we'd be happy to do that for you. And that may be a point where the Iranians are sort of given the choice, right? The Iranians believe in martyrdom for everybody else. That was the whole death to America. They had Hezbollah, they had Hamas, they had suicide bombers against the United States, on and on and on. Now they're going to be asked, the Iranian regime is going to be asked, do you believe in martyrdom for yourselves? And I think that the amount of U.S. firepower that is now in the Middle East can credibly make that threat.
What do you think should be the level of sensitivity back here at home? You know, one of the things that the president left open by not doing a let's come together speech is he's going to have a lot of people within his own base who are really pissed about this and what it means. So does that matter, or does he just focus on whether or not we have radicalized people here at home that do something stupid?
When you say radicalized, are you talking about homegrown terror attacks, or are you talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson mouthing off?
That's a good ask. I think both, but really, how much does it matter to Trump that he has people within the pod bros who are calling for his impeachment because of this? And that was theoretical. Now it's actually happened. And all of these crazy fundamentalists that we see in the country just killing people out of political exasperation.
Well, look, the idea that there is the possibility of Iranian sleeper cells in the United States, you'd have to be foolish to think there are not. And you're coming up on July 4th here. What is this, June 21st? So 14 days from now, 2 weeks, where every small town in America becomes a soft target at a fireworks display. You can imagine the FBI and others working overtime right now to think about that. That would be number one. Does Donald Trump care about the pod bros? Not at all. I think we've realized in this second term, Chris, and you and I have talked about it a lot, President Trump does not care anymore. And you know, you can say that his base, or there's parts of his base that are upset about this. There has been no one who's understood his base better than Donald Trump has. And when America is projecting strength, when the president is being the commander in chief, there is almost no better moment. I think that 8 a.m. press conference tomorrow morning by President Trump's national security team, right? He said Secretary of Defense and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Raising Cain, the general's former Air Force pilot, I believe, is he not? I'm sitting here next to a Air Force one-star, John Tykert, who just nodded along with that. But I think they're going to be the ones who are going to lay out a lot more of the intelligence. But you're right to point out that we don't know what switch flipped in the president's head. And the fact that he said so much about Benjamin Netanyahu in this speech, I think, tells you that at some point Netanyahu convinced President Trump that the Israelis had better intel than the United States did about the Iranian intentions, and that something changed. And if you're the Israelis, you really don't want to reveal that because that's sources and methods who are probably still inside Iran right now that the Israelis are relying on. But there's something that has changed about President Trump. And I think also it could be the fact that he felt like he got played over the past 60 days with the Iranians, that the Iranians weren't serious. And remember that it was yesterday that the Iranians said, oh, we're happy to talk once the Israelis stop. And that may have been what pushed President Trump over, because it showed that the Iranians were fundamentally unserious.
So the weakest part of this right now is Bibi Netanyahu saying things had changed and that there was an urgency. Everybody has seen the memes of how many times he has said that in the last 15 plus years. I really hope that they aren't relying on him when they speak tomorrow.
I don't know. Jen Psaki said it also about 3 years ago that the Iranians were within weeks of a nuclear weapon. She's hardly a Benjamin Netanyahu apologist. I think we're focused a little bit too much on the justification at this moment of why. And I think the fact that the Israelis had held off for so long, and then they themselves, in retrospect, or in hindsight, I should say, it looks, rest assured, that the Israelis had this enormous success. What they did 9 days ago was unthinkable, even to people like me who studied the Israeli attack plans, understood how they thought about things, and always considered the idea of an Israeli attack on Iran. The scope and scale of what they did was unthinkable. And in hindsight, it looks as though it was rest assured that it was going to work. I don't think we can do that. I think they took an enormous risk 9 days ago because they felt like they had to. And I think the Middle East will never be the same. It wasn't the same after the 6-Day War and the Yom Kippur War. Fast forward now, it's not going to be the same after between October 7th and these attacks.
No, I think that is a sound analysis.
I'll turn it around on you. I think it's an important question. I think you're getting at, right? Which is, who can come out? What is the argument for, oh, gee, we should have let the Iranians continue to enrich uranium 300 feet below hardened concrete? Oh, yes, we should have allowed the Iranians to continue their ballistic missile research. Oh, yes, we should have tried diplomacy with people who for 15 years were lying over and over and over again. And by the way, we should continue diplomacy after they told the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Commission, to pound sand and said, we're going to enrich to weapon-grade uranium, even though we say we don't want a weapon. Who makes that credible argument?
Right. I think that is the weakest part of the MAGA schism right now, is that they don't have any better answer about how to deal with the regime. They can say foreign wars and isolationism and America first, and Trump should be impeached. But first of all, you're right. Politically, they're all in bed with Trump. Doesn't matter how upset they are in the moment. They got nowhere else to go. They already made their bed. Secondly, they don't have a better answer. If you don't believe the regime can be allowed to enrich uranium at that level, how do you stop them when nothing else has worked?
Yeah, but
that
we're all
is
focused.
the dilemma.
Yeah, we're all focused, though, on this small schism in the Republican Party. And I think there's also an enormous amount of Democrats, Elizabeth Warren, Ilhan Omar, who is borderlining on being the representative or the congresswoman from Tehran, Elizabeth Warren, other senators who are all saying effectively, we should give peace a chance, that we've been doing for 15 or 20 years with the Iranians. And I'm waiting. You think about that 8 a.m. press conference tomorrow. There's nobody who knows media better than Donald Trump, right? He came on at 10 p.m. Eastern during the most watched hour ahead of the 11 o'clock newses. And then tomorrow he's on at 8 a.m. He has Pete Hegseth and Raising Cane on tomorrow at 8 a.m. That's before the Sunday shows. There's no accident there.
No, not at all. Look, he's a very savvy guy. And also, look, we know something about this man. This is not his wheelhouse. He is not a hawk. He is not somebody who believes that this is the way you show might. He has been very critical. And by all accounts, he has been heavily under suggestion when he has made these decisions, meaning he hasn't been driving it. He hasn't been calling people together and saying, here's my idea of where to bomb or who to go after. That he takes convincing on these. And that goes to your point about what they'll lay out tomorrow about what was used to convince him.
Well, and they were, the other thing the president said, and I think this is really important, is how much he went point by point about the Iranian regime, that this wasn't just about their nuclear weapons program. It is, how can you even take the chance, as we look at Congressman Adam Smith of Washington State, who's there in 1 second. Congressman, we'll give to you in 1 second. I just want to make this point to Chris, that you have this situation where Donald Trump lays out all of the bad acts by the Iranians and makes the point, how can you even take the chance they would get a nuclear weapon? And remember, there was all the same prophecies, almost worse. I mean, Chris, you and I weren't working together at the time, but I remember anchoring after Trump ordered the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. It was going to be World War III. The Middle East was going to have this enormous war. And you know what? The Iranians launched a bunch of missiles at a couple of U.S. bases. They called ahead and said, this is when we're going to do it. And they intentionally targeted the areas of the U.S. bases that were empty, like the sand. And then they went into their hole. And you know what? They backed down. They stopped attacking U.S. assets in the Middle East. They severely curtailed their terror funding. We don't know what happened with their nuclear program, but they went back into their mosques in Tehran and chanted "Death to America," but they weren't doing much. And I think that probably was something that Donald Trump remembers, and he noted as much in his speech.
I think sometimes people forget that two things can be true at the same time. And no matter what discussion you're having, no matter what subject you're talking about, in this particular case, you can be against forever wars and also for using the military in precision strikes in order to achieve a specific goal. I think one of the issues that people have, and I was the 9/11 generation. I remember going into a forever war without any sort of real plan on the table of what mission accomplished meant. I remember various skirmishes and incidents where our military was sent out with no real plan in sight and just remained there and would maintain the peace, meanwhile draining us of millions, if not billions of dollars in order to achieve essentially nothing, to wind up not better or worse off than we were prior to the military going in. In this particular case, everyone agreed that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. And Donald Trump and the Israelis and people who were of that mindset were saying, you can't have a nuclear weapon. We do not want to have any sort of military action, but we will if necessary. That you can't have a nuclear weapon because you are radical ideologues that daily are chanting death to America, death to Israel, death to anyone that's not like their obscure version of radical Islam. And that was the you can't have a nuclear weapon, because that if you have a nuclear weapon, the world would become a much more crazy place. And so with the heads up that they were getting really close, Israel started the process, America finished the process, and Iran no longer has a nuclear capability. The world right now is most certainly a safer place. And it is true that World War III is possibly averted because of actions like this. Other presidents, other leaders in the past didn't want to take action against Iran. The opportunity wasn't the same. There wasn't as clear and present a danger, perhaps. There were other times where other countries obtained nuclear weapons because the US or other righteous nations did not act when they could have acted. And here, the United States stepped in and filled in a void and did it 1, 2, 3 in a seamless fashion, destroying all nuclear capabilities, and certainly, hopefully, beginning the process of the Ayatollahs being removed from power, not through the Americans, but through the organic activity of the Iranian people, who are by and large for the United States and what Israel and the United States have been doing. And time will tell how this will lay out. But if the Iranian people will lift themselves up and get rid of the Ayatollahs from power and go in the direction that many of them, most of them, want to go, into a Western-looking, joining the free world, joining our economic, trade, thought process, everything. If they want to join in, they will be welcome to do so. And then the Middle East is going to be significantly reshaped for the better. The dynamic in the Middle East, God willing, is going to be quite good after this. And I believe that it's only in due time that the Saudis will become part of the Abraham Accords, and we'll watch and see what happens in Iran. But now is the time for the people of Iran to rise up and amongst themselves to initiate a new dynamic amongst the world. Xi Jinping in China sees this, Vladimir Putin sees this, and knows that peace through strength is the doctrine that is being worked with. That peace does not mean pacifism. Peace does not mean non-involved in isolationism. Peace means we want peace. We're going to encourage peace. But if push comes to shove and we're pressed against the wall, the United States is not afraid to act. So, God willing, there will be only good things that come from this. I do love and appreciate the fact that the first one that was thanked when President Trump gave his speech about what took place at the nuclear sites, he thanked God. He says, "We love you, God," as he loves to say. We should pray to God that everything continue to go smoothly, and thank God that nobody was hurt during this mission, and may we all see very soon the day where the Middle East and the rest of the world becomes a place of peace. If you like this content overall, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.